Hello guys, Neo here. I'm going to be explaining the Rayman timeline. In my opinion, there are two timelines. One where the Ubisoft games happen, and two where the original games happen. Now, the original games will still happen in the Ubisoft timeline, but the Ubisoft timeline is going to be different because there's separate origins for Rayman and stuff. So let's go. So, what happens in the beginning? Well, Polokus, I don't know, Lums, I think Polokus creates the Lums create the world, I guess. I don't know. So, Rayman is found by a bunch of fishermen, or by some fishermen that are fishing in the Sea of Lums. The most of the glade is kind of like terrified by Rayman's appearance because he has no arms and no legs. But one fateful day, well, Rayman isn't really mistreated. He's feared, I guess, at this point in time. One fateful day, the evil Mr. Dark steals the Great Protoon and basically causes mayhem throughout the Glade of Dreams, trapping the Electoons in cages well, and also defeating Batilla the Fairy. So then the magician has no other choice, but to call on Rayman for help. Rayman accepts this, just a thumbs up and saying, "No problem." So he goes through his first adventure. Batilla the Fairy helps Rayman by giving him new abilities in each level. Later on, Rayman saves all the Electoons and gets to the Candy Chateau, beating Mr. Dark, and also, before beating Mr. Dark, he goes against Dark Rayman. He will be important later on. So, what happens after this adventure? Well, Rayman Brain Games happens. Mr. Dark steals the Book of Knowledge. They call on Rayman again. Rayman beats Mr. Dark while solving math equations and stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So, what happens now? I think Rayman is a teenager at this point. At that point in time, he was a kid. Rayman eventually meets Glowbox, his best friend. Also, he then meets Lee the Fairy, and Clark the Giant. But also, Rayman meets Glowbox's wife and her 620 kids, or 650 kids. So everything is peaceful in the glade until the Robo Pirates come into the picture. Basically, Admiral Razorbeard enslaves the inhabitants of the Glade of Dreams, destroying the heart of the world and basically shattering it into 1,000 lums. But he eats one of the lums in one of the cutscenes, which cuts it to 999 or 999. So, what happens after that? Well, Rayman is powerless. He was captured by Razorbeard and was thrown into a cell. All hope seems lost, but Lee sends Glowbox with a silver lum to help Rayman. Glowbox eventually gets to Rayman and gives him the silver lum. They are able to escape. Rayman meets Murphy, who is just the tutorial guide for this game. Now, Rayman has to save Lee. According to Glowbox's children, the pirates took Lee into one of their strongholds. So Rayman also meets the King of the Teensies too, who after getting like 5 lums, they let Rayman go to the Hall of Doors. So, in the Fairy Glade, Rayman saves Lee. Lee mentions the 4 masks of Polokus, and basically, once the 4 masks are collected, Polokus can be awakened. So Rayman has to go on an adventure to collect the 4 masks. So Rayman goes to the I forgot what it's called. Not the Bog of Murk. It was the Marshes of Awakening. He frees Sam, and then they do water jet skiing. Then Rayman has so Rayman goes to the Minherior Hills or something, and basically he finally, or he meets, or he basically Murphy teaches him how to ride a flying shell. So Rayman tames a flying shell and basically rides on it. He finds Clark, who ate one of the pirates, I think, and Clark is not doing too well, so he tells Rayman to go to the Cave of Bad Dreams and or tell the guardian of the Cave of Bad Dreams, his name is Jano, so that way he can get the elixir. Rayman goes back to the Marshes of Awakening, confronts Jano. Jano's like, okay, so you already know the name of this place, but but I have kept a secret treasure in there. So Rayman eventually defeats Jano in the Cave of Bad Dreams, and Jano gives him an option: either the treasure or the elixir. Rayman takes the elixir, obviously. But there is an alternate choice where if you take the treasure, he's just fat on an island where there's a bunch of gold. Anyway, so Rayman gives the elixir to Clark. Later, he has to save Glowbox, he saves Carmen the Whale. And then, later on, Rayman gets all the 4 masks of Polocus. He wakes Polocus destroys all the pirates on land, and he's like, wait, well, I can't destroy the pirates in the sky, so you're gonna have to do it. So Rayman takes the flying shell and goes to Razorbeard's ship. Razorbeard is furious, but he also had a secret weapon that he purchased from the general from Tonic Trouble, who makes a special guest appearance. So he's about to kill Glowbox, but then Rayman's like, leave my friend alone. And then they get into an epic fight. Then Rayman has to use the shell again to defeat Razorbeard, and Razorbeard is defeated, but not without getting away. And basically, everybody thinks Rayman died because the Grogloth blew up. The Grogloth is the machine that Razorbeard used to try to kill Rayman, but oh well. All hope is lost, but Rayman isn't dead because, well, I don't know. Yeah, he just didn't die. Anyway, so I think a week has passed. Now, I'm going to try and include Rayman Arena in here. So, one day, Rayman and Glowbox get a paper in the mail that there is a competition going on in the Glade of Dreams. The two get hyped and they decide to join in the competition. Fun fact, I feel like Rayman Arena reminds me of Sonic R with its racing mode, where Sonic R has an on-foot racing mode, and so does Rayman Arena. Anyway, so I have a theory. Why is there a Dark Glowbox and a Dark Rayman in Rayman Arena? Well, Mr. Dark wants to get maybe this is what happens. So there is a challenge mode. There is a challenge after you beat the hard mode of the racing, or the mastered mode of the racing mode, and the fighting mode. Basically, there is a challenge where there's Dark Rayman, you're going against Dark Rayman. So here's my theory. Dark Rayman was really mad after Mr. Dark was probably defeated or killed by Rayman in the original game. So he and Dark Glowbox team up, try to take Rayman and Glowbox down. Dark Glowbox obviously fails at taking Rayman down. And also, they're also joined by Tilly the Fairy. Murphy's there too, but he gets beat up. Then we also, so yeah. Oh yeah, Razorbeard's back too. He has a wife, and he also still has one of his minions. So, Rayman beats Dark Rayman. I think this is the end of the story. I don't know how I could have included Rayman Arena, but this is just my theory on how it could have went. Yeah, Dark Rayman is defeated. Now, a few months later, Rayman is now an adult. He was still a teenager in Rayman Arena, and oh wait, I actually should mention one more thing that happened before Ray 3. Rayman the Animated Series. I feel like it should be canon. So, Razorbeard is now probably homeless, but he's hired by this guy named Rigatoni, who is very popular because he has a circus. Basically, he's enslaving like people for his circus. He has Bettina, Flips, Lack Mac, and Cookie. Now, Razorbeard captures Rayman and basically tries to get him to do tricks, but like Rigatoni's pressuring him, and then after one last time, Rayman's like, "Well, would you look at the time?" But then Rigatoni, like, and Rayman have this little like back and forth, and then Rayman ends up getting thrown into a cell, and basically Rayman frees um the cast, and Black Mac is also the star attraction of this circus, and this pisses off Rigatoni, so Rigatoni hires an inspector by the name of Grub to hunt down the. I don't know. I don't know how many there were. I can't remember. I think it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Patina, Flips. Yeah, so they had to hunt them down, and I forgot what happens in the show mostly. There was one episode where Flips is almost eaten by this junkyard monster, but Rayman saves her. And also Cookie gets a headache, which he's put into an insane asylum. Yeah. Uh Wacky show. So I feel like the show ended with Rigatoni just being defeated and the circus laborers are free to walk the streets of the glade. Now we finally get to Rayman 3 Hoodlum Havoc. Rayman is now an adult at this point in time, and now he and Glowbox are sleeping one night. Murphy is helping the teensies with some livestock, but then a little rotten dark lum named Andre happens, and he scares the red lums into hoodlums. So they make these scarecrowish suits, and now he has an army. Andre tries to kill Murphy, but Murphy escapes and tries to wake up Rayman, but Glowbox wakes up. He also tries to wake up Rayman, but ends up taking his hands in the process. Now some necessary fourth wall breaking happens in the first part, where Murphy and the manual have some sort of rivalry. Then Rayman finds the Glowbox and gets his hands back, who was hiding in a barrel. So the hoodlums are now raiding the Fairy Council. Rayman has to try and find Andre, but then later, Andre is eaten by Glowbox. Well, not eaten, but swallowed on accident. He is not dead, so the King of the Teensies tells Rayman that he has to go to Clearleaf Forest and find a doctor that could cure Glowbox. So they do that, but the first doctor doesn't work, so they have to go to the Bog of Merc. I don't know any other worlds in this game, but later they reach the Desert of the Canaran. The Canaran are these creatures that are very disturbed. They say very disturbing things. So, but then Rayman is eventually found by one of them. His name is Reflux, and he challenges Rayman to a fight. Rayman wins this fight, probably due to combat fatigues, and then Reflux is humiliated. Later on, Andre hears this from inside of Glowbox's stomach after being released by the 3 Teensy Doctors playing a good musical piece. He goes back to Reflux with his hoodlum brothers and tells Reflux, "Look, I'll help you defeat Rayman, but also we'll get this scepter too. I'll promise you I'll put Rayman's head on a platter." Reflux agrees to this, so they both steal the scepter of Lectus, which isn't good. So Rayman and Glowbox stop him. Glowbox for some reason likes Andre, but anyway, defeats Rayman defeats Reflux one last time, and Andre is scared back into a red lum. But it is revealed in the end that Rayman's hands are sentient when he's asleep, and they recreate Andre, probably leading to the events of Hoodlum's revenge. I don't know much of the story, but the Hoodlums come back, or half of Andre's spirit is still in Glowbox or something, and then Glowbox is possessed by Andre, and then the Hoodlums use plum juice to. So basically, Glowbox is a host body to revive Reflux. Reflux is defeated once again, and Glowbox is back to normal. Now, this is the last game in the timeline, honestly. Rayman Raving Rabbids. The other 2 aren't canon because I don't like that. I don't like the other 2. The other 2 just don't have much story to them, but Basically, this is what I think happens in Rayman Raving Rabbids. So, well, I know this. I know what happens, but I'll try to explain my version of what happens in the end. So, Rayman is having a picnic with Globox's children, but then they are kidnapped by these rabbits. Rayman is kidnapped by Sergey, and he is forced to play mini games. Later on, Rayman has to earn these plungers in order to escape. The rabbits start to like Rayman, but then Rayman realizes after escaping that the Globox children are still there. So Rayman has to go make a whole nother. So Rayman goes all the way back to the. This is what I think happens in the end. So Rayman goes back all the way to the Coliseum, saves the Globox children, probably destroys the Coliseum. End of story. Now, this is how the original timeline ends, I guess. Yeah, Raymond is now an adult. He's living it good. The end. I hope you guys like this video. This is my idea of the original Rayman timeline. So, peace out. I will make a second part which explains the Ubiart timeline of this game, or of this character. Ubiart games are really good. I like Rayman Origins. I think the Ubiart timeline will have the most depth into it. So, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.